United States submarine base at Key West, Florida. A dispatch that quoted President Truman's press secretary, Charles Ross, as saying that President Truman has no knowledge of any secret project by this government that would give substance to the existence of such objects. Ross also said that both the Air Force and the Navy deny that such objects exist.
There it is. Also, did you see my nails?
Those are so cute. Little Jack and Sally's.
No, but you could pretend it's like a Frankenstein nail and then a skeleton bone.
Oh.
But
well, I saw like the black and the green.
What is
stitching.
What is Sally other than female Frankenstein, I guess?
Yeah, those are fucking cute, man.
I know. I love the little skeleton bones so much. I'm like, we're gonna have to just do a whole hand of those. But hey, what's up? My name's Noelle, and I am the age in which sleeping incorrectly debilitates you.
And I'm Chelsea. I am old enough that I already ate my dinner at 4 p.m. and then laid down for a nap and just woke up.
Yeah. So I heard. Also, before we forget, because we've forgotten almost every time, follow us on everything.
Right from the jump.
I'm at Noelle Fain. That's Sith Lard. You can find the podcast at Go to Hell Podcast, I believe is the username on Twitter and Instagram. In the Instagram bio, we have a link to our merch page. Of course, you can go to Wildwood Owl on Etsy and get the stickers and the buttons. And most importantly, support us on Patreon. That's really the fun money right there. And we're going to do some fun things this month. Technically, last episode went live on October 1st, but this is the first actual purposefully done Spooktober episode, going back to the OG roots of a series that we did in October called Real Life Monsters. I wanted to bring up a little lady some of you might know as Typhoid Mary, and I wanted to title this one more like Real Life Monsters with a question mark, because there's a mixed feeling about Mary, whether she was the good or the bad person in the story. We will, of course, find out. I guess everyone comes to their own opinion at the end of this. Also wanted to touch that in what should have been exciting news, but was less exciting and anticlimactic, was that they're pretty sure they pinpointed who the Zodiac killer was, and it's just some guy named Gary, and he died. So
yeah, we got to talk about that real quick, because
that's something to talk about.
That was it. Yeah, they're like, oh, we probably found the Zodiac killer, and then everybody was like, cool, and then now everyone's like, you know who is finally breathing a sigh of relief is Ted fucking Cruz.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that, at the end of the day, it had nothing to do with Ted Cruz, even though his timeline didn't match up at all, and technically didn't even make sense, because he would have been like a child serial killer. It was still a fun toe to line to toe.
What's interesting is I think Ted Cruz has the power to get somebody killed. So this doesn't make him innocent by any means. I want to see the autopsy.
Ted Cruz paid Gary to be also, like, how unfortunate that the fucking Zodiac killer is just a guy named Gary.
It reminds me of is 16 and pregnant, Amber Portwood. Her baby daddy is Gary, and she gets so fucked up on drugs, and she's just like, Gary. She just, speaking of, because I follow the teen moms still. She fucking had a second baby with a new dude who she met while she was with her other dude on oh my God, it was like another reality show. It was like a couples show. Anyway, her and him are broken up because she threatened him and their new baby with a machete.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How is she not in jail?
Dude, I have no idea. Like, he was in the they had it like all on ring cam footage. So like what happens is they come to the house and the door's locked, and she's like, why is the door locked? And he's like, oh, let me unlock it for you. And then it just regressed from there to the point where he was hiding in a room on the phone with 911 while she was just hacking the door with a machete.
Oof. Well, sad to see her not in jail. You hate that. You hate to see it. Also, I don't know. What do you expect kind of from people? I know that some of the people on Teen Mom are normal, but I feel like for the majority, that's a high ask. That's a tall order.
Few are normal. Dare I say none are normal.
Yeah, I mean,
the ones who are normal, I don't follow them because they're not interesting.
that's fair. That's a fair assessment. Yeah, you got to keep it messy a little bit.
Yeah. You know what? I was going to talk about 90 Day Fiance, but I probably shouldn't because that has nothing to do with the episode.
Save it for the Patreon, which we will be recording tomorrow because I have to go see the 40th anniversary theater showing of Evil Dead tonight.
Yeah.
And Chelsea showed up to record 30 minutes late.
Well, to be fair, I thought you were up at 5:30. I woke up from the best nap I've been having. Didn't hear my partner come home. Didn't hear him preparing food. Heard nothing. Didn't hear the TV on. And I was like, look over. I see your text. And then I slurped up the stairs. I don't think slurped's a word, but that's the only way to describe what I did.
Yeah.
And then oh my God, I'm fucking suffering right now. It was one of those naps where you wake up and you're like, fuck.
What year is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So.
What are you drinking?
Mio and water.
Oh, it looked like watery beer.
The beer I like is essentially watery beer.
It's true.
So,
also, shout outs once again. Shout outs to Arnold Palmer, alcoholic Arnold Palmer's. Truly some of the most incredible stuff I've ever experienced.
Mm-hmm. You have some at my house, and I drank it with my brother last night while we were watching Squid Game.
They're so good. Also started Squid Games as well. I like it.
I know you got to go, and I know we got to talk about this episode. But part of me was like, dude, I wouldn't fucking do that. But then the other part of me was like, kind of a deal.
You just gotta follow the rules, dog.
It's just millennial
also, stop
mindset.
Touching your mic. Is this day one shit? Jesus.
Yeah.
This is the real Squid Game, bitch. Don't touch your fucking mic or I'm gonna blow your head off.
I'm dead.
Red light, green light, bitch. You died.
Yeah. I would be tempted to do something now, but it's very Hunger Games. I haven't finished it, but I'm getting the impression that only one person can win.
Probably. We'll find out.
Maybe I'll have finished the series by tomorrow. So
maybe. I hope you do. Okay, speaking of finishing a series, let's talk about nothing that has to do with anything. Let's talk about a controversial real-life monster. But first, to get to what she is, let's talk about what it is. Typhoid. I actually learned a lot. Typhoid fever, aka typhoid, is a disease caused by Salmonella bacteria. Salmonella can be divided into two main groups, typhoidal and non-typhoidal. Non-typhoidal can be transferred from animal to human and from human to human. They usually invade only the gastrointestinal tract and cause salmonellosis.
I've heard of salmonella a million times. Is all salmonella typhoid?
No.
Okay.
There's different versions. We're just talking about typhoid.
You get salmonella from uncooked meat, right?
You can.
Or eggs?
It's here's the thing. There's so much about salmonella that makes no sense to me, and I still don't understand what exactly. But I do know that if you go to the salmonella breakdown page, there's 4 different types.
Okay.
But one of the things is typhoid disease is caused by salmonella. Salmonella can be a bacteria produced by specific whatevers, but typhoid fever from salmonella is specifically about shit. So, fecal matter.
That's what you get in Oregon Trail, right?
I thought that was
dysentery?
What is it? Dysentery.
It's dysentery. Never mind.
It's fine. So, anyway, animal to human, and human to human. I think animal to human might be kind of the nasties, like the eggs and the uncooked fish. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
I don't eat either of those. It's not my problem. So it usually invades only the gastrointestinal tract and causes salmonellosis. That's a lot of S's. The symptoms of which can be resolved without antibiotics. Typhoidal, though, can only be transferred from human to human and can cause foodborne infections, typhoid fever, and paratyphoid fever. So typhoid fever is caused by salmonella invading the bloodstream, the typhoidal form, as we talked about above, or in addition...
Talk about a butt. Sorry.
From a butt. This is going to have to do with butts, though.
Yeah.
Spreading through the body, invading organs, and secreting endotoxins, the septic form.
So this is just like food poisoning, but when food poisoning
When food poisoning comes from shit.
Yeah. So non-typhoidal is the type where you just poop it out, right? Then
I assume.
I need to be a doctor.
I'm sorry, I'm not a doctor. It's so confusing.
That is confusing.
But this is the main point. This can lead, the typhoidal kind that gets into the organs and the bloodstream, can lead to life-threatening Why does it have a B? Why does it have a B? Hypovolemic?
Sure. Hypovolemic?
That sounds so Russian. Hypovolemic shock and septic shock.
What is hypovolemic?
I don't, bitch. Again, I am not a doctor.
That just linked me. I clicked on it and it linked me to Wikipedia.
Yeah. I don't know what it means, though.
Hypovolemic is an emergency condition in which severe blood or other fluid loss makes the heart unable to pump enough blood in the body. So you're just running on empty.
Okay, running on empty shock and septic shock, and requires intensive care, including antibiotics. Most infections are due to ingestion of food contaminated by animal feces or by human feces. Typhoid is spread by eating or drinking water or food or water contaminated with feces from an infected person. Risk factors include limited access to clean drinking water and or poor sanitation. Symptoms may vary from mild to severe and usually begin 6 to 30 days after exposure. Often there is a gradual onset of high fever over several days. This is commonly accompanied by weakness, abdominal pain, constipation. Diarrhea is uncommon. Headaches and mild vomiting. Some people develop a skin rash with rose-colored spots. In severe cases, people may experience confusion, and this is a big one. They call it delirium when I was reading the articles about Typhoid Mary. So it's literally people just, it's like Alzheimer's. It rots your brain. Without treatment. Poop. Yeah. Without treatment, symptoms may last weeks or months or cause death. As far as we currently know, only humans can be infected. A typhoid vaccine can prevent about 40 to 90% of cases during the first 2 years. The vaccine may have some effect for up to 7 years. For those at high risk or people traveling to areas where the disease is common, vaccination is recommended. Other efforts to prevent the disease include providing clean drinking water, good sanitation, and hand washing. Until an individual's infection is confirmed and cleared, the individual should not prepare food for others. Let's remember that. Okay. So then typhoid is essentially just eating too much salmonella and it develops into, I guess, a disease, but I forgot where I was going with that. But then the person carries typhoid, so the poop becomes contagious. So it's it's a chain leading into a chain leading into a chain. Okay. Salmonella can, in some cases, cause typhoid fever. And the case in which the salmonella is from that causes typhoid fever, specifically, not the 10 other types of shit you can get from shit, is literally from fecal matter, either animal fecal matter or human fecal matter. Okay. Getting into the food that you are eating or the water that you are drinking. And only people can get typhoid fever.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So once you're infected with poop, then you could become contagious with more poop. Should it develop?
So
into
once,
typhoid. Okay.
well, here's the thing. Let's talk about that a little bit more because that's a fair point to flesh out. You get the typhoid from someone. This is going to kind of spoil the story, but it's the greatest example of how this happens, and is that last sentence there. The individual should not prepare food for others. So you are out at a restaurant and you order, I don't know, peaches and cream cobbler. Okay.
Mhm.
And the line cook back there is no gloves cutting a peach, right? So he's holding the peach with one hand, cutting it with the other, and then he's grabbing the peaches and he's putting it on top of your little cobbler. He's scooping out the ice cream, putting it in there. There is direct hand to food contact, okay? Do you understand?
Yeah, I guess that's why I'm having
This
such a hard time
man-
swallowing this.
This man took a shit 5 minutes previous, wiped his ass, and didn't wash his hands. And now he is preparing your food. That is how you can not only get salmonella, but typhoid fever. And then you become, and this is how the spread continues. You become contagious, but only if your shit gets on someone's food or water that they ingest. So then you would also have to have taken a shit, not washed your hands, and then spoon-fed Oliver.
That's what I'm like grossed out about, because we've all gotten food poisoning, and the likelihood of like the food poisoning that we've gotten, none of us want to really agent poop, man.
Yeah.
We've all ingested poop. If you've ever gotten food poisoning, you've ingested poop. Basically.
Yeah, no, that's yeah.
You want to know there's only one thing grosser than that in this whole world.
Yeah.
And that's the bloody sheets I slept on 2 weeks ago. Only thing grosser than that.
It is, yeah, it's gross. Also to think that the amount of times that we've gotten food poisoning and it probably being from fucking, someone's unwashed hands. That's why like germ theory and sanitation and cleanliness is very important. But anyway, so there's that. So let's talk about Mary. She was born September 23rd, 1869 in Cookstown County, Tyrone, I believe. I don't know. Sounds not right because it's now called Northern Ireland. At the age of 15, she emigrated to the U.S., where she lived with her aunt and uncle for a time, and then went off and worked as a maid, but eventually became a cook for affluent families. She would later be described as 5 feet 6 inches tall, a blonde with clear blue eyes, a healthy color, and a somewhat determined mouth and jaw. From 1900 to 1907, Mary worked as a cook in the New York City area for 8 families.
Oh my God. You already fucking know where it's going, you know?
7 of whom contracted typhoid. So let's go down the line. In 1900, she worked in, good luck, say it, Chelsea. Mama Ronek? Does that sound? That's what it looks like.
I know the emphasis is wrong on those syllables, but like Mama Ronek, I do like that.
She worked at Mama Ronek. That's what it looks like. That's what it says.
Phonetics has taught us nothing. That's exactly what it looks like.
Where within 2 weeks of her employment, all residents of the home she worked at developed typhoid fever.
It's gross, Mary.
Guess what? She takes off. 1901, she moves to Manhattan to work for another family, and presumably under a new name or alias. Shortly after her new employment with this family in Manhattan, the inhabitants in the house began to develop fevers, and the laundry woman died from typhoid fever.
Poop. Died from poop.
Yep. Mary, and this is where we don't know, okay? Have it be for self-preservation or malice, took off again.
See, that's my question here is I don't think it's that sus if like everybody's dying from typhoid, because I'm assuming they did not know what caused typhoid at the time. Otherwise, we would have had a little bit more cleanliness.
Here's the thing. The typhoid vaccine was introduced in 1896. The problem, and I kind of talk about this later, and like typhoid fever hit between 1906 and 1907 to the US specifically. So Mary's fucking timeline. The problem is, and you go, how did we have a typhoid like kind of spree and also have a vaccine 6 years prior or whatever?
Yeah, how does that fucking happen? How do we have a vaccine for a perfectly treatable illness / pandemic and people just don't have access to it?
Isn't that the greatest thing? You're going to find a lot of parallels in this story as to what's happening currently. Germ theory was, and we're going to learn about that a little bit more. It was kind of like the way that people looked at germ theory in 1904 was the same way people look at masks now. Scientists say, hey, wearing a mask helps prevent the spread of disease by whatever, 95%, right?
Yeah.
Just like people were like, scientists were like, maybe washing your hands helps prevent the spread of disease by 90-something%. But people at the time, the common man, if you will, were like, I think it's the air and ghosts.
Oh my God.
You know? So, you know, find what parallels you will there. So we don't really know at this point if Mary was taking off because, and this is my bias is going to seep in and I apologize. But if there's anything I know about angels of death who are typically female serial killers, it's like they get out of Dodge right after doing something. But I'm not saying she did any of this on purpose. I just say, you know, whatever. Maybe she was just running from this disease because she didn't want to get sick. Who knows? Sure, but anytime she just took off when the house got sick. So she took off and then went to work for a lawyer. Like different family, right? Still in New York, still upper class. But again, left after 7 of the 8 people in the household became ill.
Mary, that's sus.
Don't worry, she's doing it again. Oh. June 1904, Mary was hired by a wealthy lawyer, Henry Gilsey. Within a week, the laundry lady was infected with typhoid and 4 of the 7 servants fell ill. No members of Gilsey's family were infected because they resided separately, and the servants lived in their own house. Immediately after the outbreak began, Mary left and moved to Tuxedo Park, where she was hired by George Kessler. 2 weeks later, the laundry lady in the household was infected and taken to St. Joseph Regional Medical Center, where her case of typhoid was the first in a long time, finally drawing attention to what was going on. August 1906, Mary took a position in Oyster Bay on Long Island with the family of a wealthy New York banker, Charles Henry Warren. Mary went along with the Warrens when they rented a house in Oyster Bay for the summer of 1906. From August 27th to September 3rd, 6 of the 11 people in the family came down with typhoid fever. The disease at the time was unusual in Oyster Bay, according to 3 medical doctors who practiced there. The landlord who they rented the house from that they were staying at for the summer was like, hey, Charles, this is going to be impossible for me to rent out because you literally, everyone who stayed here at this place got fucking typhoid. You need to do something about this.
Yeah, because I guess at that point too, it's typhoid's popping up. Mary split, so they're I'm assuming they're going to try to point the blame somewhere or try to at least find a cause.
Yeah.
And this guy's like, it's not my house my house wasn't infested with typhoid before. And then these people who are renting it were like, hold up.
Yeah.
We didn't fucking do this. So they're trying to essentially point the finger at someone.
Yeah. It's more of like, what the fuck is going on? Like, so the landlord who owned the summer house in Oyster Bay is like, hey man, like this is a super affluent community. We don't have fucking typhoid here because at this time typhoid was associated with like, the lower class, the poors. And he was like, what the fuck? Like you need to help me get to the bottom of this because my place will be almost impossible to rent out to all these rich families if the last people who were here, every single person got it, like what the fuck? So at first they brought in these like professionals to take samples from the pipes, like water samples from the pipes, faucets, toilets, and cesspool, all of which were negative for typhoid. And then this is where Charles Henry Warren hires George Soper to investigate. And let's talk about George Soper for a little bit.
Who's George Soper?
Who is George Soper? These next two paragraphs are directly from the National Geographic. George Soper was not your typical detective. He was a civil engineer by training, but had become something of an expert in sanitation. Soper had been previously hired by New York State to investigate disease outbreaks. Quote, I was called an epidemic fighter, he later wrote, and believed that typhoid could be spread by one person serving as a carrier. At the time, without regulated sanitation practices in place, the disease was fairly common and New York had battled multiple outbreaks. In 1906, the year Soper began his investigation, reported 639 people had died of typhoid in New York alone, but never before had an outbreak been traced to a single carrier, and certainly not one without any symptoms themselves. Okay, so here's the fun. We're gonna dive a little bit into that later. But let's keep talking about our great old friend George. So he's been hired to investigate. Okay? Mm-hmm. A name continued to pop up.
Oh, I bet it's Mary's.
Yeah, you may have guessed. He found that name was attached to 22 infected people between 1900 and 1907, all who had employed this person. The same name from the case in Long Island, the cook, Mary Mallon, who had arrived 3 weeks before the first person became ill. Mm-hmm. He was unable to locate her because she generally left after an outbreak began without giving a forwarding address and was going by different aliases. But sure as fucking shit, Soper learned of an active outbreak in a penthouse on Park Avenue. 2 of the household servants were hospitalized, and the daughter of the family died of typhoid. And you'll never guess who was the fucking cook.
Mary. That's the thing. It's like she's got to know.
Okay, but we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into that.
Yep.
Under sections 1169 and 1170 of the Greater New York Charter, Mary was arrested as a public health threat. She was forced into an ambulance by 5 policemen and Dr. Josephine Baker, who at some point had to sit on her to physically restrain her. She was transported to Willard Parker Hospital, where she was restrained and forced to give samples. And I want to highlight here, everything was forced upon Mary, as in the hospitalization and testing. Even for the 4 days that she was in hospital, she wasn't allowed to get up and use the bathroom on her own. But that's because she was not fucking having any of it. Throwing wild fits and constantly trying to escape, claiming she
not even washing your hands, Mary. You're not even doing the bare fucking minimum.
Well, we'll find out. Claiming she was the pinnacle of health and wellness and rarely sick. There could be no possible way she had typhoid and was spreading it, despite what the testing was showing. Despite the literal trail of sickness left behind her, she refused and began to insist that she was part of a government conspiracy. Sound fucking familiar? Mm-hmm. The massive numbers of typhoid bacteria that were discovered in her stool samples indicated that there was no conspiracy. Mary was full of typhoid and would become what is known as asymptomatic carrier.
I've heard of that before. Dare I say recently.
Some might know what that means. That means having it and not showing any fucking symptoms.
Huh. That would have happened in modern times, though. We're so much more educated.
Yeah, we've learned from our mistakes. Mm-hmm. The infection center was in her gallbladder. It's also presumed she was born with typhoid because her mother was infected during pregnancy. The solution would be to remove her gallbladder.
Girl, She's like Blade, but with typhoid.
Mm-hmm.
All of their strengths.
A daywalker.
None of their weaknesses. Oh my God.
And to her credit here, a gallbladder removal surgery was not a walk in the park back in the early 1900s. So I get her not really being a fan of that. But again, Mary was having none of it, refused to believe any of it, and was unwilling to cooperate. On March 19th, 1907, Mary was sentenced to forcible quarantine on the Northern Brother Island outside of New York. While quarantined, she gave stool and urine samples 3 times per week, and under questioning while there, Mary admitted that she almost never washed her hands.
Mary.
While gross, this was the era where common people didn't understand germs, the same way dead bodies left in the water supply were killing people, but they thought it was the air. While science was developing and understanding, people didn't trust or understand it. Sound fucking familiar?
Oh my God. I just want to look up like technology of the late 1800s because I really don't think it was that far off.
No, we had the vaccine for this in fucking the 1800s, the end of the 1800s.
Yeah, like most of the stuff that we have now, we still have from the 1800s. Batteries. They had batteries then, man. You're not allowed to not wash your hands in an era where we have batteries. I don't even need to read the rest of this list. Also matches, though. They had matches.
They were only half in the future.
Yeah.
Mary also refused to give up her job as a cook, in part because it was her source of income, and in part because she refused to believe that she had typhoid.
You know what else was invented in the late 1800s?
What?
The sewing machine. She could have become a seamstress, and then they could have washed all the clothes after she used them to dry off her poop hands and then sold them for cheap.
She could have done literally anything. But she chose. She was like, "No way! I love my." She's like the scene from a Scary Movie where he's like, "Grab my good hand," but it's just covered in human shit.
My germs. Putting the little nub in the pie.
Yep, yeah, that's exactly it. While in this government-forced quarantine, George Sofer, the guy who found her, wrote about Mary in the Journal of the American Medical Association. The press picked up on it, and she was quickly given the nickname Typhoid Mary. She didn't fucking like it, by the way.
What? It's so cute.
Sofer wanted to write a book about the experience and offered to give Mary royalties. Again, another way she could have never had to make food and get her shit hands everywhere. But she refused and locked herself in the bathroom till he left. She was super embarrassed about it. There's like kind of, and this is where some people say she's not a real life monster because they're like, she was like an Irish immigrant who was like just a day away from being on the streets with not a penny to her name. And she felt fine. So why, you know what I mean? It just didn't make sense to her.
To like give her the benefit of the doubt, like I don't think I would know if I was a carrier of COVID. But because people are just dropping dead all around us. And it's like, I don't know if they got sick from me. We're in the middle of a fucking pandemic, you know? But when somebody tells you like, hey, you are a carrier and you're killing people, it will pay you if you let us tell your story. That's pretty much the hand you've been dealt.
Yeah.
Can't prepare food anymore, girl.
Yeah. The thing about it is that like, even if she wants to believe in her heart of hearts that she didn't have typhoid, the fact that people were getting sick and dying after she left their care, like how many families do you have to run through? Apparently 7 in a death. And she still refused to believe it. Like, even if you want to say, I don't have typhoid, you have to say something is going on. Something is happening, and I am connected to it, so let me just listen to a professional to try to see if that helps prevent it.
I mean, there's the common denominator, but I don't know, man. I can see it from her side of just being like, I know people who have been infected from COVID, and when they get COVID, I peace out. What if they got it from me? Like, how would you know? You know?
If you continued to go to, if it was the first time, maybe a fluke. The second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh time is not. That's just facts.
Maybe. I know like 6 people who have gotten COVID. What if they got it from me and I'm just objectively saying here, I mean, I am vaccinated, so it wasn't me. But, I could kind of see it when you're in the middle of a pandemic. But then when it starts popping up in these affluent neighborhoods, and then once somebody actually tries to tell her, the sober guy trying to tell her, that's when it's like, all right, now you are going to be the villain if you don't play ball here.
Yeah. It's a little ridiculous to me. Like, there's a common denominator and it's her, hands down. And she has medical professionals telling her that it's her and she refuses to believe it. I just can't.
Right.
So there were 2 physicians who thought the forced quarantine of Mary was unnecessary, overly strict, and just like wrongful punishment. Milton J. What's that last name? Rossanu? Oh, look at you.
Rossanu?
Rossanu? It doesn't matter. And Charles V. Chapin, both known for their studies of infectious diseases. And I want you to remember the sentence that they both said. They argued that had she just been taught to carefully treat her condition and ensure that she would not transmit the typhoid to others, it would be fine.
Yeah, you just got to wash your hands.
Yeah. They're like, if we just taught her how to treat it and how to wash her hands and how to not, get shit hands in people's food and serve it to them, it would be fine.
It's not seasoning, Mary. It doesn't taste good.
So, Mary, again, not a fan of it. She suffered from numerous mental breakdowns after her arrest and forcible transportation to the hospitals. She even tried to sue the New York Health Department in 1909. The New York Supreme Court closed her case, stating she was a public health crisis. Didn't fucking matter. It's one versus all, essentially is what they said. She wrote to her lawyers that she was treated like a guinea pig, obligated to give samples for analysis 3 times a week, hectic treatments, and strict and harsh medicines. She was first told that she had typhoid in her intestinal tract, then her bowel muscles, and then in her gallbladder. So she was like, I don't trust them. And to this, I want to say, this is an interesting sentence here. Because she goes, they told me it was here, then here, then here. Baby, the common thread is that you have it.
Yeah.
They were trying to pinpoint where it was, but as she was refusing to let them run some necessary tests, they were kind of shooting in the dark. And also, with more testing and knowledge comes more hashed out and precise evidence given.
Right.
You could come in and you're like, I broke my arm. Then they're like, oh yeah, you broke your arm. But it's not until they get you under an x-ray machine that they find out where specifically you broke it.
Right.
All of those things are all connected. Yeah.
And it's a disease internally. It's not going to just sit in one spot usually.
Yeah. Well, after 2 years and 11 months of quarantine, Eugene H. Porter, the New York State Commissioner of Health, decided that disease carriers should no longer be kept in isolation and that Mary could be freed if she agreed to stop working as a cook and take reasonable steps to avoid transmitting typhoid to others. February 19th, 1910, Mary said she was, quote, prepared to change her occupation, that of a cook, and would give assurance by affidavit that she would, upon her release, take such hygienic precautions as would protect those whom she came in contact from her infection.
I don't think she would. I don't think she will.
She was released from quarantine and returned to the mainland of New York, where... we don't need to... I'll talk about her fake surnames. Where she would use fake surnames like Breshoff or Brown.
Yeah, Brown. Inspiring, Mary.
You guessed it. Took a job as a cook.
Dude, you could get jobs for literally anything back then. You could have just shown up and been like, hey, can I clean your front porch once a month? And they're like, yeah, here's a wage that you can actually survive off of.
She could have just screamed news headlines on the corner.
Yeah.
But to be fair, Mary did try to be a laundry lady, but it paid $20 a month versus the $50 she was used to making cooking. She had an infected wound and was out of work for months.
Oh.
Again, she's not the pinnacle of health, which led her to go back to what she knows best, cooking food, not washing her hands, and infecting people with typhoid.
The doctors had taught her at that point how to like not infect people by like managing her disease. So, she was just willfully choosing not to do so. Like she could have not gotten caught by just being clean.
Yeah, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks like washing your hands after taking a shit. So no agencies that hired servants for upscale families would offer her employment, because she's Typhoid fucking Mary.
Yeah.
So for the next 5 years, she moved to the mass sector, working in a number of kitchens and restaurants, hotels, and spa centers. And as a surprise to no one, almost everywhere she worked, there were outbreaks of typhoid.
Not surprising.
And our good old friend Sopher, who caught her the first time, fucking knew it was Mary again. But like before, she was constantly on the move and changing her name. 1915. Mary started working at Siloam Hospital for Women in New York City as a cook.
Oh my God. Hospital for women too. That like babies, maternity ward.
Soon, 25 people were infected and 2 died. The head doctor, Dr. Edward B. Cragen, called Sopher and asked him to help in the investigation. Sopher identified Mary from the verbal descriptions and also by her handwriting.
Yeah, he's like, oh, this bitch again. I like that he just knows her handwriting now.
Good old shit hands Mary.
Yeah. Old Poopy Magoo.
But Mary was fleeing from the police. Again, let's pause here before we get to this end of the story. Okay?
Yeah.
First time, we'll play your game, okay?
Yeah.
First time, she goes to work for someone. The entire house gets typhoid. She leaves. She works for someone else. The entire house gets typhoid. She leaves. Works for someone else. The entire house gets typhoid. Someone dies. She leaves. Works for someone else. And, we do that 7 times, okay? She then is fucking arrested by the state of New York for having shit hands.
Yeah.
And feeding people the shit food.
Right.
And she is put in almost 3-year isolation on a island.
Yeah. She got a pretty significant timeout.
Yeah. Okay. And they said, Mary, we'll let you go, but you have to wash your hands and not feed people. And both of those things at the same time.
Her eyes turned black. And she was like, what?
And even if she tried to be a laundry lady but got hurt and had to go back to what she knew, even if that's true, why are you cooking again? Why are you still not washing your fucking hands?
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's just like, there comes a
fault
point.
Her for the desperation of needing to work, but I will say just wash your hands is such a bare fucking minimum, and wearing a mask so you don't spittle in the food.
Well, here's the thing though. If I was brought to a forcible quarantine and I was told you are the reason why these people died and these people got sick, and here's how you prevent it, I just the burden of the responsibility, the guilt, the cognitive dissonance that you would have to literally look back and see a fully proven trail of blood by your shit. I just don't. At what point does your conscience come in as a human and go, for the betterment of everyone else, I will not do it? But that's me speaking as a reasonable person.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the Herman Cain Award winners.
Exactly. They're literally taking their entire family out because they chose to not, play the game. But
yeah,
this is the tough part, because it's the same conversations we're having now where she, in her heart of hearts, believed that this was a conspiracy against her, that she was being framed, that she was never sick in the first place. So why would she stop cooking? Why would she start washing her hands when she, with every fiber of her being, despite what medical professionals, the law, and the state told her, she believes that it's all bullshit?
Yeah,
so like, but that's the thing that gets me is like, if she had no repercussions other than people telling her like, you could get someone sick, it would be a different story. It's the fact that she literally has a body count. She literally has a body count and she's still refusing to admit that it's her. That's where I have a problem, because I'll even give the ignorant bliss to someone who's like, we'll put it in the tech context of COVID. Like, if you don't wear a mask and you're not vaccinated, you could get sick, but they haven't yet. Mm-hmm. It's all hypotheticals to them. For her, this was no more hypotheticals. This was a trail of hospitalization, sickness, and death caused by her. Yeah. How can you ignore that?
You can't. You know what I mean? Like, once you're told, and the thing that kills me is there's such a bare minimum. And I think that's what's so annoying with COVID is there's a very bare minimum. Like, even if you're, oh my God, hold on. I felt that one brewing. Sorry. COVID. Even if you're like, I don't want to get vaccinated, like, you know, you're kind of dumb, but I'll wear a mask, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same with Mary. Like, you gotta, you can fuck yourself over it. That's fine. But you got to do the bare minimum to not kill other people. And her bare minimum was just, I don't even want to say career change. It was literally just, Mary, wash your hands after you poop. And then this isn't a problem. Yeah. Like, whenever she's interacting with people every single day and they're not getting sick because she's not preparing their food. It only happens when she's preparing the food.
Exactly. And this is where, like, do you think that she was doing it maliciously?
I think she was doing it in a very obstinate way. I don't know if she set out to give people typhoid, but I can guarantee that she set out not believing she was the villain.
I think that's a fair stance to take. I don't think she was doing it maliciously, even though that's a fun, like, line to toe, that she's like the angel of death when it comes to shitting on her hands. But
she's just giving, like, cupping her hands, just taking a squat. Yeah.
But I think that, and I say this even in today's context, you are a real life monster if you have been shown and been, like, given proof that what you're doing is causing sickness and death, and you still refuse to do anything preventative about it. You still refuse to wash your hands. You still refuse to stop serving people with your unwashed shit hands. You're still refusing to wear a mask, whatever it may be. It's these things, and this is why I think that she's a real life monster. Wash your hands is just as easy as wear a mask.
Agreed.
Yeah. Sometimes it is inconvenient. Sometimes you have to take all your rings off and then put them on the sink counter and get the soap and then scrub them together and sing happy birthday. And then you have to dry them off and put the rings back on. And then sometimes you forget the rings and you have to go back to the bathroom and hope that they're still there. It is not the most convenient thing in the world to do. Just like sometimes you have a big old wig and a big old costume on and you're sitting in the front seat and you have to put your seatbelt on. And that means taking the wig off and taking the costume off and putting it in the passenger seat so that you can get the seatbelt on. But it's something that we do.
Yeah.
For the safety of not just ourselves, but of others.
It's getting an Uber instead of driving home drunk.
Exactly. And this is like the same thing. And the fact that she goes against it and then gets people sick again. It's like, if she didn't believe it before, now is your fucking literal Hail Mary to believe it again. Yeah. And she just continues on to a hospital for women next.
Yeah, and that's kind of a bitch, Mary.
Yeah. And that's kind of the part where the is she just stupid or is this malicious becomes a little blurred for me, because how many times she saw that no one got infected when she wasn't cooking.
Yeah.
And then she started cooking, and then people got infected. She ran, started cooking. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
And where there's smoke, there's fire. And she was playing fast and loose. And she was like, I'll play fast and loose in a women's hospital. Like man, at least go work for like the patriarchy. Get him from the inside. She could have been America's greatest hero. And she woke up and chose chaos.
Yeah. It's not great. So the doctor hired Sofer. Sofer immediately was like, it's my good old friend Shit Hands Mary. Mary was fleeing from the police. Eventually, she was arrested in Long Island. Guess why? Because she was seen taking food to a friend's house.
I was hoping you were going to say she was seen taking a shit into her own hand.
I mean, essentially, seeing notoriously written about Typhoid Mary carrying a pie over to a friend's house is just as powerful of an image as her shitting into her own hands.
Yeah,
because that's essentially what you're eating. Okay, so here we are. March 27th, 1915. She was arrested and returned to quarantine on North Brother Island. She was there for more than 23 years. That was it. You know, they were like, one time, you're, whatever. Second time, bitch, you're done.
Yeah.
She was given
this time.
You have to. She clearly doesn't fucking care. She was given a private one-story cottage. And in 1918, she was allowed to take day trips to the mainland of New York, which honestly, maybe don't.
Maybe don't.
Maybe don't. On the island, she was given the job.
I'm going to pee my pants. Just keep talking. I'll be right back.
Fine. On the island, she was given the job of a technician, where she washed bottles, did recordings, and prepared glasses for pathologists. Also, the only time she washed was bottles, not her hands. She spent the rest of her life there and was fairly active until she suffered a stroke in 1932. She never fully recovered and was hospitalized partially paralyzed till her death in November 11th, 1938 at the age of 69. Research led to an estimate that Mary had contaminated at least 122 people, including 5 deaths. Other sources attributed at least 3 deaths to contact with Mary, but because of health officials' inability to persuade her to cooperate in her constant changing of names, the exact number is unknown. High estimates say she may have caused at least 50 deaths.
I can see a higher number just because I don't see them tracking the deaths of anyone who wasn't affluent,
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, how do we want to, not just deaths, but contamination? If Mary is the reason why your house got sick and then your house got another house sick, Mary is still, I would say, patient zero.
Chain reaction.
Yeah.
I would be furious if I was one of those families. Like, you're getting me sick because you're not washing your fucking hands. You're so desperate to cook food, but you won't do the literal bare minimum.
It's rough. You can argue blissful ignorance in the beginning, but after the arrest, that's just choice.
Dude, Mary, hate to say it.
What?
Probably Republican.
1,000%.
Would have been born today. She would have been like,
she would have been an anti-vaxxer, body autonomy bullshit bitch. You don't know what that fucking word means.
Non-vaxxers now are just like the modern day Typhoid Marys.
Literally, they are. They're like, I don't care what science says. This is a conspiracy. And they're like, you have been linked to 3 deaths. And she's like, says who? And they're like, the science. She's like, I don't believe it. Yeah. And they're like, wash your hands. And she's like, no.
Yeah, she's like, I'm being oppressed. She's like, just whipping her hands around and just like little poo spores. She's like a fucking mushroom, man. You know, when you step on a mushroom and all the spores come out, but that's her with her poo spores.
Literally.
And the poo spores are on her hands.
I'm my body, my choice. They're like, please just wash your fucking hands. She's like, no.
Yeah, you're oppressing me.
Just in the same way, anti-maskers are like, I can't breathe with a mask on, and they make all the like like
Oh
when
my
a mask
God.
is on. That's her when she would put her hands underwater with soap. She'd be like, "What?"
Yeah. Yeah, just screaming and just
Yeah.
horrific death rattles.
Yep, that was her.
It's you know in Lord of the Rings when they put the leash on Gollum and he's like
Yeah.
throwing his body.
That was her. They were doing
Yeah.
like how you show a toddler how to wash their own hands, where you like prop them up on your feet and you hold their arms and you rub the hands together for them with the soap. That's her. And she's screaming like Gollum. No!
Yeah.
My rights! My body, my choice! That was a good Gollum.
That I can never attempt it again because I don't think I could do it.
That was so good. Oh man, yeah, Typhoid Mary was a fucking anti-vax Republican for sure.
So she pretty much lived a nice long life though. Yeah?
Yeah, she died at 69 and she died because of a got him with her last one. She got him. She
Born in
died
69, died in 69.
She had a stroke and got pneumonia while in the hospital, half paralyzed from her stroke. Bet she believed in the pneumonia real quick, but couldn't believe in typhoid. Funny how that works.
Weird. Yeah, funny how that works.
So from this is to be kind to her, I guess, from a 2013 article, which is like the analysis of it's the fancy science of your guts and butts. That's the technical term, guts and butts.
Mm-hmm.
They said, quote, "The history of Mary Mallon, declared unclean like a leper, may give us some moral lessons on how to protect the ill and how we can be protected from illness." By the time she died, New York health officials had identified more than 400 other healthy carriers of salmonella, aka asymptomatic carriers, but no one else was forcibly confined or victimized as an, quote, unwanted ill.
Were those other people cooks, and were those other people getting dozens of people sick?
I doubt it. I bet that they were getting
it.
Well, here's the thing. I bet that they were getting a shit ton of people sick, but like you were saying, I bet they weren't getting the rich sick, and also I bet they weren't making the fucking food for everybody, so.
Yeah, that's the thing, right?
Peace and love, Mary. Sorry.
Well,
sorry, I'm not sorry.
Well, and the Irish were like fucking hated for a while, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
So it could have been like a racial thing. Maybe, well, I guess that's not a race. Maybe like an ethnic thing.
Well, yeah, at the time, and this is actually on the not this most recent, but the week before the first episode of Leftovers with Hassan and Ethan, which is a great podcast on YouTube. Go listen and watch it. Hassan talks about like quote unquote whiteness and how white isn't a race because white at certain points, even in American history, has meant different things. Mm-hmm. White has meant exclusionary of Irish. White has meant exclusionary of Italians. White has meant exclusionary of the Jewish people. And now white means everyone who's just not dark. Yeah. Just in the same way that Barack Obama, while mixed, half white, half black, is considered black.
Yeah.
And it all stems back to the quote unquote one drop racist theory of white supremacy, which is like if there's one drop of not white in your bloodstream, then you are no longer white. It all comes down to just racism. But it definitely, in this case, her being an Irish immigrant was not playing in her favor. Typhoid was connected with poverty. And that just goes into speaking about like infrastructure and lack of education on, you know, germ theory.
Yeah.
And so like all those things were working against her, but it's just kind of like, it's all circumstantial. Like, not only was her being an Irish immigrant part of it, but it was also her working for wealthy families. It was also her making food. Like, it was just, It's tough because I
It
get
is.
this slippery slope that they're
Yeah.
like, why, if this was such a problem, why? Well, here's the thing. It's like, yes, she was investigated and found because she was barking up the rich people tree. That's a fact.
Mhm.
That's why she was caught. A private investigator hired by a rich family whose daughter fucking, died or whatever. Like,
Right.
I get that. That's the only reason why she was got. That's how she was found. That's how she was charged and isolated. The problem should have been that when they found out she was an asymptomatic carrier, that the state of New York should have investigated other asymptomatic carriers. Should have been like, where else are we seeing typhoid pop up?
Yeah.
In mass, let's go investigate that. Let's start talking to people. Let's start doing testing, and not just punish her, but, and I don't mean punish, but like find everyone. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And I also get how that's a slippery slope. But at what point, in the same way that the New York Supreme Court said, Mary, we're throwing out your case because you're a public health crisis, at what point do you have to say, it's a public health crisis, we have to investigate? And the solution is so easy. Wash your fucking hands.
Yeah, that's the thing, I think. Is just it's just the fact of how fast and loose she was playing. I mean, Mary, she essentially had a loaded gun and she was just shooting it off in the street. And then when they came for her, she's like, well, I wasn't aiming at anybody. It's not my fault anyone got hit. It doesn't matter, girl. You were still fucking firing and you did little to nothing to stop it.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. It's crazy when you think about it. But
yeah, and if somebody had COVID and they coughed on me, I'd fucking want them sent to an island too. Okay, bye. I'm not going to fault you for being sick if you genuinely didn't know.
Yeah.
But if
it's crazy.
If somebody knew that they straight up had COVID and then came out the gate just trying to get people sick with COVID or not doing anything to prevent people from getting COVID, I don't care at that point. Like, it's just, we don't have crimes for it yet. It's like the same with cyber crimes. We don't really have laws to catch up with these types of things.
Yeah.
But we know they're morally reprehensible.
If you were just doing something and it was hurting you, whatever. But it's the fact that that's something you do can hurt other people that the masses have to step in.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think that's it at the end of the day.
100%. Yeah. And it's like, you want to believe people do the right thing, but sometimes people don't do the right thing.
Clearly.
And that's why we're seeing like such a cultural shift right now with vaccinations. Now, you can't even be a government employee unless you're vaccinated.
Yeah. Well, like the crazy thing is that, like, even in Mary's case, looking at it, sometimes doing the right thing is hard and it's not easy for you. But if it literally means like saving hundreds of other people, like all we have is these little specks of humanity on this stupid fucking rock we're floating through space on that we all share. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing guaranteed.
Right.
Nothing else is guaranteed to you. You could believe that there is something else, but the only thing I can 100% say that we've got is this right now.
Yeah.
And if you can't even do, like, it's just doing what's right even when it's hard. Like, it's thinking of others, not just yourself.
Yeah.
I know that's a big ask sometimes.
Well, it's even like doing things for others at a detriment to yourself.
Yeah.
And her not working as a cook, that sucks. Like, I'm sure it was very hard, but
yeah,
you're killing people for profit at this point. That's what you're doing.
Exactly. So there you go. Real life monster ? Potentially.
I like your spin on it because I did do a brief YouTube video, kind of listening to it in the back while I worked. And it painted her as like a huge victim. And that was the first time I'd ever heard of Mary like completely painted as a victim. But I'm glad you brought me back down to earth.
You're welcome.
Not a victim, just a monster.
Yep. You are so welcome for that.
Thank you.
Well, everyone else, tell us how you feel. Is Mary a real life monster? Or is she a misunderstood anti-vaxxer? We'll never know.
Never know.
No, and history will show, I guess. That's the other thing. History is doomed to repeat itself if you don't pay attention. Another great. The parallels between Typhoid Mary and what's happening with COVID are just they're not great.
Uncanny.
It's just too much. But yeah, next week we'll talk about something a little less real, but still as terrible.
Still spoopy. If anyone wants to hear anything in particular, let us know. Try to keep it spoopy. We do have some requests that are going to be on the back burner because they don't fall into the theme of this month, but we'll get them written up so that we can cover them as soon as October is over.
Hell yeah. Now, as always, I want to say, hail Satan.
Hail vaccines.
Also, hail vaccines. Hail washing your hands.
Hail the bare minimum.
Always.
Jeez.